From a closet, also known as the Jim McCarthy Voiceovers World Headquarters Studio, this is the JMVO Weekly Primer. Please subscribe, rate, and comment via jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast. Welcome to this episode of the JMVO Weekly Primer. And I've got a great guest this week, Mr. Rich Redmond. We've been friends for 10 years. The drummer extraordinaire, the most sought-after drummer in the world, let alone Nashville.
I don't know about that.
And it's one of those things that this podcast is based on being positive and marinating your mind in good things and priming your week with some sort of mental food nugget to munch on, and that's good for your brain, and just marinating your mind in good stuff. I should really try to find a way to condense that. And you always have had a positive outlook on life. You say that you live in the land of rainbows and unicorns.
Yep, that's right.
And we're coming off something, I apologize. Last weekend, I couldn't put out a podcast. I didn't put out a podcast last night because I was trying to book a guest. But last week, we are coming off a pretty big high. We had a great guest for the podcast you and I produced for yourself, Pick Rich's Brain. We took it remote. We brought it down to Miami, and we interviewed Grant Cardone, who's a multi-New York Times bestselling author, business expert, sales expert, all that stuff, and just a great time all around. What were the takeaways you pulled from that? Was anything life-changing that happened in that for you?
It was all great. I think that you and I were impressed with Grant's team, his staff, his employees, the culture there around it. It was a great vibe. They started each morning with a morning hoorah kind of a session, celebrating each other's victories. And, he's just a doer, man. He's like, you know what? I don't want to have to drive down to CNN to do their – I'm just going to do my own show. So he just went out and bought the equipment, and, he surrounds himself with super talented people. So he had a whole support staff there. They were really great to us, and it looked like a totally professional news studio, right?
Yeah. No, it was totally professional.
Yeah, really, really, really great. And, I got to read all of Grant's books. And, from doing that, it was really wonderful because I had a lot of people reach out to me, people that I would never think would be a student of Grant's ideologies. They're like, yeah, man, I've known about him since 1994, and I took his classes, and I have all his books. And I'm like, great, So it was a major win, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. The one thing that I came away with is that I'm certainly not posting as much as I should be. Because I get inside my own head and I ask are people really going to want to hear from me? Is this valuable enough, or am I just kind of bloviating? That's the biggest thing that I tend to fight,
Yeah.
But mainly, I'm always a big proponent of the Crash Course for Success. If you're not familiar with it, it's an acronym, CRASH, which is the basis and the foundation of what you talk about in your motivational speeches, all your presentations. You've shaped your life around this concept, which is, C.R.A.S.H, commitment, relationships, attitude, skill, and hunger. And when I tell people that's the basis, they're like, oh my gosh, that just makes so much sense. And it's funny because they don't go in that order. At some point we have to make a commitment, which takes working on a skill. Right. Commitment and hunger, I guess, kind of go in line with each other, but they are different.
Yes.
Your skill will then become, you got to work on your attitude, because a lot of that becomes your attitude then dictates the nature of your relationships. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh my God. You got to have the skill to do the job when you do create the relationship and the door gets opened for you. But at the same time, sometimes you won't create relationships without having the skill, right? And then it all is wrapped around a commitment that you have to make in your mind first before you do anything. And then when you do all these things and you wrap it in a positive, flexible, team-oriented, make everything about the other person type of attitude, you can't go wrong with this formula for success. And what, our friend Paul Depon, who's co-writing my first book, it's going to be called The Crash Course for Success, be a motivational book for the masses, for everybody that are interested in personal and professional development. We decided, wow, I've been using these things my entire life without putting a label on them.
Mm-hmm.
Once you can label something and compartmentalize it and make it easy to remember for people, it really has the potential to be something for me to be able to do for the rest of my life.
Right. Well, how did that start? Tell us in a nutshell your story for those who don't know of you.
Yeah, for all the folks tuning in, Jim and I have been friends for about a decade, and that is no small feat because, this is such a kind of every man for himself, Wild West business. If you're in the arts or entertainment, there's a lot of fair weather friends out there. So when you have somebody that gets you and understands you and you can weather changes in life together, it's a pretty cool thing. But I'm originally from Milford, Connecticut. I'm a northeastern kid. Started playing the drums in 1976. Got a drum, fell in love with it. I wanted to be in KISS, and then I moved to Texas. My dad got a job in Texas. Texas has a great music education program. I got the best training in the world. I ended up going to Texas Tech University and the University of North Texas, getting a master's degree in music education and percussion. I'm basically an overeducated rock drummer. I moved to Nashville 21 years ago, and for almost 20 years, I have been playing with country rock sensation Jason Aldean and his rhythm section consisting of Kurt Allison and Tully Kennedy. And we've played on 23 #1 songs, and we're on your television in the morning and at the night, and we're in the music videos, and we get to play all sorts of crazy, sweaty, drunken shows all over the country every year.
But
and that's really fun. Yeah. And then around that, I do fun things like coach people and mentor and teach drum lessons and write books and do my speaking and for corporate America and for schools. And then I'm even have doing a little bit of acting. As a matter of fact, my part playing a over-the-top radio DJ just made the trailer for a movie called All Light Will End. So if you look up All Light Will End on Facebook, All Light Will End on Instagram, you will see today my portion of the trailer for the movie, and it's hitting the festival circuits. Just go to All Light Will End, Google that, and you'll see where all the film festivals are that the movie's going to be in.
Very cool. Are you playing an over-the-top DJ that's like a morning jock or a Howard Stern type shock jock?
It's like, are you ready for some ear porn? That guy.
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, no, that was, and it's basically, I'm playing a version of myself, which is, I think, what good actors do. They figure out how to, play a version of themselves.
Did it feel natural?
Totally natural. I think they were just hiring me to be me, and there just happened to be a different name on the script, which is what happens in real life. So in the crash
breakdown, you and in the book you're going to break this down how they all didn't hit at once. In your early years, you knew you had a hunger from watching, KISS and all the different videos throughout the, getting into that part of your life. That started firing up at what age did you decide, I'm going to do this?
Oh, yeah, we were just talking about that. 1982 and 1983, MTV was happening, and I would sit there waiting to watch Martha Quinn because I had a crush on Martha Quinn. There was Nina Blackwood and J.J. Johnson and Alan Hunter, Mark Goodman. We would watch the same videos over and over and over with bated breath. It was like, wow, music and images, and it's 24 hours a day. Well, a band called The Police came out, and there was a record called Synchronicity that came out in 1982 or 3, and then Van Halen's 1984 actually came out in either 1983 or 1984.
It was 83. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the year before. And so I was just like, this is it. I'm doing this, man. So it was like Van Halen, Rush, and The Police that were all over the radio. MTV was happening, and it was like, this is going down, man. I'm going to do this. I don't know how, because I grew up in El Paso, Texas, where there is nothing to do, and there is no connection to the music business.
But you started making something happen. Your commitment started to be fleshed out. The hunger preceded it, led up to the commitment, therefore started making you work on your skill.
Yes.
Right. So
hopefully all with a good attitude. And then the missing part was, relationships, which led me to the pursuing quality relationships that could help me navigate the music business and get to where I wanted to get. So a couple of lateral moves was going to Lubbock, Texas, and then going to Denton, Texas, and then to Dallas, Texas. In each of those markets, I had to reinvent a new version of myself and let the world know that I existed. And my goal was to be the top drummer in each of those markets. And as I climbed the ladder and all those things, I kept hitting a ceiling. And when I hit a ceiling, I was like, where do I really need to go? New York, LA, or Nashville. Nashville wasn't even on the radar. I was going to go to Los Angeles, and by fluke or destiny, or I don't know how these things go down, but I got some auditions in Nashville. And in 1997, I moved to Nashville.
How do new people coming to town take this philosophy? Is it something that if they've never heard about it, they're reaching out to you, they want to be mentored. What are typically the first few questions that they ask you?
Have you heard about anybody looking for a drummer?
That's an obvious one, right?
Yeah, and so it starts there, right? And can I pick your brain over coffee? And it's really funny is I didn't do a lot of brain picking when I got here. I just jumped into the deep end of the pool and said, I'm going to play and I'm going to develop my skill set and I'm going to shout from a mountaintop that I'm here, and I don't care how long it takes. People, by God, are going to notice me. I don't, but that's the thing is that I didn't put a time on it. I didn't try to take a shortcut. I just did the work. People are afraid to do that.
Was it true then as it is now?
Yeah,
people are still afraid.
I think kids have maybe an easier road this day because it's an easier way to promote yourself and get connected. You are one thumb click away from connecting with one of your heroes. So, how does everybody reach out to me? Instagram direct message, Facebook message, my websites. They can reach out and say, hey, I like you're playing on such and such a record, or hey, I understand that you teach lessons, or that wasn't an option. I sent a letter to Greg Bissonette. Mm-hmm. I probably sent a letter to Steve Gadd. I probably sent a letter to – now these people are all people that I can run into at conventions and we're all in the same room and now we're all colleagues. But at the time, 25 years ago, they were way ahead of me and I looked up to them. But there was no way to get in contact with them.
So back then it was kind of – if you were just willing to put in the work, you could really rise above the rest fairly quickly as long as you were willing to do what you're talking about. Come into a room and say, I'm here.
I don't know if it was quick, though. It didn't seem quick to me.
Not quick. A little bit easier than it is today, especially with the given level of noise, how much noise is out there.
There's a lot of noise, but there's easier ways to – there's the tools are there for all of us to say, here I am.
Yeah. But you're also competing amongst all the other people out there saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were always doing that, but we didn't have the tools. Like, literally had to go out, press the flesh.
Yeah. You had to do hand-to-hand combat.
Hand-to-hand combat, which is also more time-consuming.
Yeah. Oh, no, it wasn't. It didn't. My point is it's still going to take the same amount of time. It was a little bit easier to be noticed.
Yeah.
Because it just took a little bit more elbow grease. In this day and age, the understanding is that you have to have a value of some sort to bring forth in addition to your announcement that you're here.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm here, and most of the world's going to turn around and go, yeah, and?
And that's where you play. That's where you get up and play your instrument.
Right. Where a lot of your skill, and a lot of it still comes down to you and I have talked about this before, the unwillingness to play lower Broadway, if you wanted to talk about that. And we always talk about that. Another thing we're going to talk about is experience that we had last week in some of the stores where we were. But you're running into people that are unwilling to play lower Broadway. Address that a little bit.
Well, Nashville is more on fire than ever. You can play some of these what they would call honky tonks or tourist traps. Some of it's a mix of like iconic venues and now tourist traps. Big box business storefronts. Your Margaritavilles and all this stuff. But there's just a sea of places that people can play on the lower portion of Broadway Street in Nashville. And some of these gigs pay real money. What you get out of it is way more than what you would lose, You go down there, you play, you work your craft, you let the world know you exist, you go home with some money. There's some interesting somewhat entitled people, lazy people that are moving to Nashville that are just like, oh, why would I do that? Why? But, at the same time, maybe they got to figure it out. Maybe they got an uncle on the inside, or there's some nepotism, or they're already working with somebody, or they're coming into town and they already have a reputation from maybe another music market. Why would they want to go down there and do that? But for me, moving here at 26 years old, ready to do anything to make it, it was like, I will play anywhere and everywhere.
That kind of tenacity is rare these days.
Yeah, and I do spend a lot of time in Los Angeles because I love it. I love the lifestyle. I love the environment. It's a very a city of ambition. It's a city. Everybody's working on something. There's a lot of energy. And when I go out there, I don't always have the luxury of having a drum tech, and I still, in this age, schlep drums into Italian restaurants and rock and roll nightclubs, and I still play weddings out there, and it's just having that willingness. Nothing bad comes out of that scenario. So I got to play some Bruno Mars songs, and I got to play I Will Survive, and I got to play Satin Doll, but I'm probably getting a really nice free meal, and I'm overlooking some ocean view, and there's pretty women, and I make $700 or $800, and I meet new people. What is bad about that situation?
Well, you're certainly looking at it the right way, is you're finding the equity in each of these opportunities.
I mean, $700 or $800 for a wedding sometimes is twice the amount of money sometimes these Nashville recording artists pay their poor bands.
Yeah, that's very true. You had talked about doing these types of gigs and everything. And one of the things I talk about a lot with voiceover and creatives in general is the unwillingness to, they kind of posture at first with their rate, because in our industry with voiceover, we're getting hit up all the time. Okay, what do you charge? That's the first question out of the gate, which is a fair question. And my point has always been, well, you're in an industry that anybody can do this. We're being commoditized. And I always bring up, I said, if you go downtown Nashville any given night, you're going to watch world-class musicians play for peanuts, typically, okay? And it's those people who are there, they're giving it their all because they want to be discovered. In the voiceover realm, you have a lot of people who romanticize the past and want things to be the way it is, the way it was 10, 20 years ago, but it's not the way it is anymore. And what I always preach is you need to find the equity in each client that comes your way and treat them like a bar of gold. Yeah, that is great. And who knows, maybe you need a manager, Jim. My whole thing is you don't need a manager until you need a manager. But there's something, what is amazing about a manager, it's a line of defense against time wasters and people that, are not going to really, really hire you. Mm-hmm. And also by having a bad man, having your Ed McMahon, having your good cop, bad cop, they can do the unpleasant things for you, like negotiate your fee. Mm-hmm. And not bring you down too far. And that's kind of like what I have noticed about having managers handle the speaking, acting sides of my creative pursuits, is that they get to bring up the uncomfortable conversations, and it doesn't get in the way of a friendship. There's definite virtues to having that. I'm a big proponent of being your own salesperson, as are you, and you certainly have had to do that over time. Oh, yeah. For most voiceover people, that's, comes in the form of an agent. Yeah. And, the agent does all the negotiating. But my point is that a lot of them lack the skills to go down that road of the meet and greet, the fact uncovery, the value proposition. Because I always tell them, I said, if anybody is getting into the business or is complaining or bitching about the past and how it used to be, you have to have that sales process in mind. And and those dinosaur type thinkers are going to get, they're going to get outworked by the new kid that knows no different. What is the quote? The train that is technology doesn't care who's standing on the tracks. Yeah. That's Roy H. Williams. You got to adapt, improvise, change. Mm-hmm. But getting back to commitment. But it's also getting back to working your attitude. And I've seen in the VO realm, people with the attitude that they literally take the emails they get and will put them up on Facebook forums for voiceover and flame the client. I mean, I'm going, what are you guys doing? You know,
saying, look at, they wanted to pay me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, semi-public forums and just flaming their clients. It blows my mind. And
maybe one of the clients flaming. Kidding. That's horrible.
But I'll kick that joke. Attitude, everything in life, 99% attitude. I've gotten all these things written down from a meeting you and I had where we broke out all the different tenets of each part of C.R.A.S.H.
Yeah, we were at Bricktops. We were having a nice Pinot Grigio. It was a very productive day.
It was. We talked about commitment, where you addressed 10,000 hours of practice.
We all love our friend Malcolm Gladwell, and I'm actually talking to Paul, hoping that some of these scientific facts make it into the book with some footnotes. Or we're not going to use footnotes. I think we're going to use a bibliography.
I got you.
Yeah.
Proximity, getting around people, committing to that.
Yeah.
Around people that actually do what you do.
Getting around people that do what you do. And then the other thing that's really interesting is the Cardone philosophy, and what other people subscribe to, is that you make the average of the 5 people you spend around the most time around, which is when you start thinking about it, is very interesting, and how do you create new green pastures for yourself if the majority of your time in your life is spent around a certain group of people. And a lot of times, that's the way life works. You're around that core group of people at all times. You talk about that, and I actually challenge a lot of people with that line of thinking, and ask them, if you're not getting anywhere, are you auditing A, how you come off, and B, who you're hanging around with? And are they able to make you better, or are you around people that are constantly telling you how great you are? Because that can be problematic as well. But it is better than someone telling you that you suck all the time. There's got to be some sort of constructive criticism, of course. Right. In relationships, you said make yourself a top 5 person, cultivate those relationships. Retirement is in people, which is a very interesting point. Wow. And lifestyle of mixing business with pleasure, where people tend to do the opposite. Now, Jim, what did I call this document that you're reading? It's just, I just basically wrote it down as notes. It's on a document. Oh, yeah. Would you like me to send it to you? I'd send it to me. Thank you. I thought I did. I'm sure I have it somewhere, but oh my God, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it to Paul and make sure that all those things are in the book, because those are literally bullet points of the whole, you know what I mean? Yeah. And this was just kind of you and I talked about this. And just came up with it as, because I was saying we had just gotten out of a coaching seminar where I said, if you had to break down each of these virtues and really dive into them, what would they look like? And you said, well, commitment looks like 10,000 hours, and skill that can be tied into skill as well. Skill. Oh, yeah. If you come to my event, that's basically it over the course of an hour. There's never an event that goes, this is my pillars. You will never see me speak and have me not address every single one of these things. Yeah. Commitment, you have play, run your business like it's your last day, and remind yourself daily. And I've always asked you, in this business that you were in, the commitment and the tenacity you needed to last, getting here at age 26, and then on up to where you started meeting Jason and everything, and think that the slow but steady rise to where you are now happened. The tenacity it took to every day. Everybody has those days where I should just throw in the towel and get a real job. Has that ever crossed your mind? As close as I got to throwing in the towel was, binge watching the X-Files, playing video games, and eating Haagen-Dazs, basically, but I had a lot of real jobs that were my day jobs. As real as it got was like playing into the clubs and until 3 a.m, and then having to go substitute teach at 7 a.m, and I had the education to get a real job. I could have been a school teacher at any time, but the main thing is really, you're talking about being obsessed. Successful people are obsessed. Is it common? This is what I'd like to know. Is it common for somebody who's 47 years old to look back in his life and say, I had a singular focus and obsession to play the drums every day of my life. And if I wasn't playing the drums on a particular day, I was working on developing my career or moving that thing further along so I continue to get behind the set of drums. I mean, is everyone in life that obsessed about something? Is it their goal to find something that they love that much that they could be that obsessed about? That's a pretty weird and rare thing, isn't it, to be thinking about one thing every day for 41 years?
No, I don't think so. If it's your thing, I think everybody here on the planet is meant to do something. I just had a conversation yesterday with a guy who, he's been in one industry for the past 25 years and feels kind of stuck. And I had one of these sandpaper conversations with him where I asked him, look, what is it you always wanted to do? And he looked at me and said, I don't know. And I'm like, gosh.
Well, that sucks.
That does suck. I said, didn't you have something you always wanted to do when you were a little kid? A dream of I think everybody's got to have something that they wanted to be.
I mean, it's I'm just like thinking about it. Just think about all the days. Okay, let's do the math. Let's do the math. We got 41 years times 365. I've been saying one word to myself every day. It's been the forefront of my mind for 14,965 days. Drums, 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 drums. Drums, like a zombie. Brains, like it's a primal, like if I don't get this, I will die. Like that's crazy. I never shifted. I never said, well, maybe I'll learn the guitar like Dave Grohl so I could be a front man. Like it was just like I tried that and I was like, this sucks. I'm going back to my thing that I'm really good at.
This is where I'm comfortable. The funny thing is, I know you and I talked about this, I believe, last week. There was a story about Bon Jovi's drummer, Tico Torres, where they had been playing so much, I guess, throughout the late 80s into the early 90s, and they took a little bit of a hiatus around that time, and then they made a comeback, and he did an interview where he said that it was like a 5-year hiatus, and he said during those 5 years, he didn't even want to look at drums. Does that ever even cross your mind as well?
I didn't play drums today, and I literally probably won't play the drums until Friday because I'm trying to knock my book out and I'm doing podcasts with you and, teaching. I have a college kit job that I teach. Well, I teach drums. Am I going this week to teach college? Either way. No. Yeah, but 5 years in a row? That's bad. No.
He was just so, I guess they got to the point where they repulsed him.
You'll be really rusty. But no, if you get to that point, he found another creative pursuit. He found painting, which is great. That's right. Which is kind of like me with acting. Is like I really enjoy it, but at the same time, I'm a competitive person. So figuring out what all the potential things are in that industry, I'm like, well, I want to be really good. I want an agent. I want to work. So it becomes less of a hobby and more of like, oh shit, this is another thing that I do all the time.
Now, here in Attitude, you say audit your attitude daily. As a person who I can be very cynical, and I know that, and I've been told I can be negative, I'm very well aware of that.
No, I've never heard that. You're just sarcastic.
Sarcastic?
Yeah, you're just like, you'll say something and then you look at me like, get it?
Silent high five?
Yeah.
But to audit your attitude daily is something that I've actually put into practice for the past 2 years. My story is that my self-employment was completely involuntary. I just decided that after the last time of working for somebody for the man, I was done. I came home and I told my wife I'm done. But that's going to take a reapplication of marinating my mind and my mental acuity. And honestly, you and Grant Cardone and Gary Vaynerchuk got me through those rough times of like, look, if you feel like your back's up against a wall and you're not going to be able to pay a bill, you got to start making some phone calls. You got to start, putting some more energy out there and finding who's got my money, and that's really the kind of attitude I've adopted over the last 2 years. Getting back to those points in your life where, what kind of methodologies did you use to audit your attitude on a daily basis over the past 40 some odd years doing this? Because you've had some rough times.
Yeah, the drums were always there for me. They're the mistress. And they allow me to make money. They allow me to make myself happy, in the process make other people happy, and they provide a revenue stream for me. It's like, wow, how lucky are we?
So you just reminded yourself, look at what I get to do.
I get to do that. I mean, yeah, there was tough times. First year of college, a little rough. I was a little bit of a mama's boy. I had to do my laundry, and it was by myself, and the whole deal. And then, just the whole starting college thing. And then, making the transition to the University of North Texas and being a newlywed, and then trying to figure out how I could move my craft forward and still try to be a husband. It's like ultra multitasking. And then going through that divorce, and then being single for another 10 years, and then getting married again, and then just being divorced here recently, and, adjusting to that. First couple of years in Nashville, really rough. Here I am with my tens of thousands of hours and my master's degree and experience and a great attitude and great gear. I couldn't get arrested. I had to work day jobs. It's like, but as long as you just get up in the morning and make the best of it and keep moving forward.
It is what it is. You're going to have good days and bad days, man.
Yeah.
Now, skill, I've heard you say this before, never be the fat Elvis.
Well, it's really, I think the thing is that I'm thinking about taking this out of my speech because people love Elvis, and I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be a mean person. He was a really accomplished man. If I just saw the HBO two-part documentary, the 4-hour thing.
4-hour documentary.
Yeah, and I was there with my friend who's, and also with the people from HBO, and it's just like, I am not using that. But it's for some reason one day I thought about that because it just resonated with the idea that when things can become a little too easy and you become that established and, for you in your career, when you're really, really doing well, it could be easy to become complacent, be uninspired, maybe take some things for granted, and the quality of your work may slip. And that's what we don't want. We don't want that.
So there's definitely a balance there. And I actually was listening to a podcast today where they talked about exactly that, where the guy being interviewed, who was a multi-millionaire, basically said, I try not to keep liquid cash as abundant as it needs to be or could be. Because if I do that, I feel like I'll slip and fall off my game. And he addressed exactly that. I'll become complacent and get too comfortable.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I'm like, but even in the back of your mind, if it's not liquid, you kind of know you still have a safety net, in a way. So it's kind of an interesting way to think about it. Talk a little bit about hunger, and we'll kind of head towards a wrap up.
Yeah, no, hunger is is basically this, like I try to surround myself with people that are birds of a feather, that are hungry for success, like-minded people that have a fire that burns in their belly to be successful. You can spot these people from a mile away. A good business owner will hire these people because you can teach skills. But hunger, a person has that or they don't, really. And what I say is passion is the engine and hard work is the fuel. You fuel that passion, that engine, with hard work. And if you're passionate about something, it doesn't feel like hard work, which allows you to work harder, which allows you to cultivate even more success. And it just becomes this endless cycle. The viewpoint that my co-author Paul is taking in the C.R.A.S.H book is that he says, I think hunger is a lack of something. Basically, it fuels your commitment because you don't have something yet that you want, which inspires you to make that commitment and develop those skills with a good attitude to meet the people you need to meet to make the whole thing work in perfect harmony. So that was Paul's take on it. It was a lack of something. I think more it's just like we have a hunger, to do something.
Well, at that point when, you didn't have something, and it's kind of, you got to reinvent that thing that you don't have to stay hungry. Which kind of brings up the question of, and I asked this last week when you came to me after we were talking to Grant. You threw it to me, and because of the lack of viewing of the questions that were coming up on Facebook Live, I had to basically think on the fly and come up with my own question, which turned out to be a pat on the back.
We didn't have a lot of callers coming in.
No, we did on that one.
Yeah,
we had a lot of people that were chiming in. I just couldn't see them. because we weren't there were connection issues. So I knew that, and as I was taking notes, I wrote down some questions because I knew at one point you were going to throw it to me and say, "Hey Jim, what are people asking?" So I made sure that I was prepared.
We got our system down.
We have to. Yeah. And the question I had was like, and I'm kind of giving myself a feather in my cap because he actually said,
great question.
That's a really good question. He says, I don't think I've ever been asked that question. And I'll ask this to you. What is the most satisfying thing about what you do?
I think, he had a great answer, and it may be my answer, which is helping people. My purpose in life, I wrote down my purpose in life, which is to affect people in a positive way and change lives. And I know that I can do that through two ways, through entertainment and through education. Mm-hmm. And, I'm a teacher at heart. I've been teaching since I was 19 years old. And I have been performing forever and ever as well. I put those two things together in my event called edutainment. And whether I'm, playing for the masses with Aldine to a packed amphitheater, or I'm doing my speaking event, or I'm doing one-on-one coaching with a young drummer like my buddy Sarah from Connecticut, mm-hmm. It's like I know that I'm helping people. Traveling to 16 countries for the U.S. military. Don't step over there. That's a mine. Don't step over there. Where are the drums? Show me where the drums are. And I brought that slice of Americana to those soldiers. Music heals and education helps, and you put two of those things together, it's like peanut M&Ms,
or peanut butter jelly.
Yeah.
You had mentioned before that you're not a competitive person, or you are a competitive person, but in that sense, I've never seen you get intimidated by another drummer. You're very open and welcoming to having drummers of all colors, stripes, shapes, and sizes come into your world. And you never saw, a guy who may be better than you or getting more gigs or more sessions than you. I never have sensed anything from you that conveyed a sense of jealousy or envy, that you always just had a natural inclusion for those people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, drummers, we have a fraternity. It's just this weird unspoken thing that other musicians don't have. It's this mutual admiration society. And we have societies, we have conventions, we have more magazines than other instruments. We get together more. But I think what I was doing is I was stealing what I could from these people. So I could steal what I could, because great composers borrow, but good composers borrow, but great composers steal. So I was always told, like, and if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And I always try to accentuate the positive. So if I look at a drummer, he's like, oh my God, I don't like his technique, but what an amazing sound. Or, mm-hmm. Oh man, his cymbals are too brittle, but oh, what a really killer touch, or what a cool band that he plays with, or what a nice feel. You're pulling something away that you could take that's super, super positive. And so we really do have a nice fraternity. And I think more than ever, I have a confidence in what I bring to music and what I bring to the drumming world. And I think that confidence in yourself and that self-actualization and that what's the term you use all the time? Self-awareness.
Self-awareness. Yeah.
I'm aware of what I can and can't do, but I'm pretty happy with the things that I do, because I do them differently than anyone else on earth, because we're all so unique. Mm-hmm. No one is going to do it like me. And I just have realized that more than ever in recent years, especially as you get older. You're just like, I've been emulating other musicians my entire life, and I have enough experience and have created enough opportunities for myself that I have my own thing. Like, wow, I pulled this off. It's a luxury to get to that point.
What was the most driving thing ever said to you that really made you fired up and motivated?
I liked when my high school jazz band director told my dad in 1985, he said, your son will do really well because he knows how to take direction without being offended. I was like, wow, that is why I'm quoting my band director from 1985. Mm-hmm. he said, he's good. He practices all the time. He's focused. But that's the great thing is that he's willing to take direction. And that's all we do. We're in a service-oriented world. We're in a service-oriented industry. Another thing was, that I would have guest artists that would come through when I was in college, and they'd be these big jazz musicians from New York or LA or Miami. And, when they look back at you like good kid, or like they would tell my band director, like, hey, this kid's got a shot, like, we'll keep an eye on him or whatever. And, then I didn't cultivate a career in jazz, or electric jazz or any of that stuff, but I sure took all that stuff with me. You can't take anything away from an education,
Mm-hmm.
I also didn't let school get in the way of my education. Like when I had a chance there were nights when a band would come through Lubbock, Texas or Dallas, Texas, and I had a music theory test in the morning, and I would blow off studying to go see King's X or Rush or Santana or something, because in the big picture, that was the real world. It's like music theory from the 16th century. Well, I hope I pass, and I got through school. So.
Hey, you got a master's in education. I mean, that says something. What was the most anything memorable said directly to you? Anything stick out
to me?
Well, I think it all happens to us. Somebody always comes along and just gives us a doozy out of left field. Where you're like, wow, I'm going to file that away. If nothing, we can move on.
Well, no, I'm sorry for the long pause. I know in radio, if you're not looking at the image, you're actually just listening to the audio, it's like, is it still on?
The pregnant pause.
I mean, that's just weird. That one thing I remembered from my band director in 1985, Jamie Olivas, my jazz band director, the saxophone player. When things like when you work with somebody like Bob Seger and he knows your name, or you work with Bryan Adams and you say, tempo good for you, Bryan? And he goes, you're the drummer, which told me he had confidence in me. Mm-hmm. To play what I needed to play, let's see, when Kelly Clarkson says, sound great, man, high five, hugs backstage, that's all great stuff,
Yeah. I mean, you come across that so regularly that I would imagine every now and then it's kind of like, wow, that just happened.
Hey, great job on the drums, man. That kind of stuff. Super cool,
That was like, I actually did a couple of recording sessions in Vegas with none other than America's dad himself, Alan Thicke.
Yes.
He came in for the first time, got to work with him. We recorded a couple of different pieces. He had to come in a second time, maybe a month later, and I went down to go grab him to bring him up to my studio, and he's just like, hey, Jim. And I was like, oh.
He used your first name?
He used my first name. And that's an amazing thing about you is that I was in the car business and remembering names was so paramount to success, and I was so bad at it. But my gosh, you could teach a course on that.
I know who could teach a course on it. Garth Brooks, really? he and Kenny Chesney apparently, like the urban legend is they have techniques for memorizing names. And I do all sorts of tricks, like immediately ask for a card, write it down on a cocktail napkin, put it in my notes in my thing, and then I look up the person on Facebook, and then I, whatever I can do, because a lot of times I will re-encounter these people. Something that I still fall prey to with my aging brain, also in traveling as much as I do, is I might see somebody that I haven't seen, and I'm used to seeing their avatar on Facebook or Instagram, and I see them somewhere else in Nashville, and it's not the place where I met them, and then they have a different haircut, and they get highly offended that you can't remember them. But meanwhile, they know who you are. So I don't know. I try my best. At least we're half the battle is there, because you're only as successful as who knows you. So if they remember what I look like, fantastic.
Yeah.
And I try.
That happened to me the other day. I had somebody come up to me like, hey, Jim. And I'm going, oh, crap. I have no idea who this is.
Yeah. No, the gerbil starts spinning on the treadmill.
Oh, yeah. And you're trying to find a tactful way to say.
It shows on your face. And
I know.
Oh, bro, we met at Bar Taco in 2000. And you're like, oh, my God, that's right. Right?
It's so embarrassing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I typically, if I'm with my wife or somebody else, I do the introduction trick, and I say, "Hey, Courtney, this is my wife, Courtney," and then at that point they'll introduce themselves, and I'll go, "That's who you are."
I know, that is so tough. I mean,
I know.
And that's a tough trick to pull it off.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. I got two more questions. Basically,
I didn't know we were doing an interview today. I thought you and I were just talking about eating plantains and stuff.
We could do that. I mean, I'm just kind of riffing here, and
do we have any viewers, or we're going to put this out later, right?
We're putting it out later. This is being recorded. We tried the Facebook Live thing, and that's not working for some reason.
Now, where are you archiving these? Like on Stitcher and all that stuff?
Yeah, Stitcher and iTunes. It goes out there. It's going to go up on YouTube and Facebook video. So,
and you have your own intro. And did you do your own intro?
Yeah.
You're listening to.
I did.
Okay.
And and if you listen to the first 5 episodes, I don't have one. It's like a cobbler's shoes scenario.
Oh wow.
And I just finally one day ripped it out, and I was like, yeah, I'm voicing my own freaking intro. I should probably change that down the road. But hey, it is
whether you're in Nashua or Nashville, Cabo or Columbia.
It's actually from the studios, from a closet, which is the JMVO World Headquarters Studios, which is a closet off his son's bedroom.
You might as well make that place, pimp it out, put lights in there.
Oh, I've got the T-shirt, and I've got my awards. Okay, so I've got a little bit of. It's not exactly Crash Studios. Okay.
Well, it's also like Mark Maron's in a garage, so hey.
Whatever works.
I know.
It's all about the content, all the stuff, all about the stuff that falls out of our mouths.
In a garage.
That's incredible.
That's incredible.
I can only imagine the security detail in that neighborhood, let alone the region around the neighborhood.
Yeah, how about that?
My gosh. I mean, how long ago was that?
I should check on the date. I just listened to it.
So it's a brand new podcast, relatively new podcast, like a new episode?
What the fuck with Mark Maron, WTF with Mark Maron. Look it up on your iTunes. He's got 900 episodes.
Mark Maron.
Maron. Great comic. He plays a curmudgeon-y wrestling coach on the Netflix show Glow. And you and Courtney would love that. You should binge.
Glow. We watched that.
Binge Glow.
Yeah, we saw it.
He's the guy. He's the curmudgeon-y wrestling coach.
Right.
Film director guy.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think of what he looks like, but I'm sure Mark Maron. Okay. Yeah. So 900 episodes, and one of them has President Barack Obama on it.
How about that?
That's nuts. Can you only imagine how intimidating that was?
He did a good job.
I'm sure it was. I mean, you do the best you can.
No, you're right.
Well, wrapping things up, being that this is a positivity podcast, trying to put good things into people's heads, marinate your mind in good stuff, or good shit, as I say.
Nice.
What do you marinate your mind in? What are you marinating your mind in as of late?
I like marinating myself in all sorts of things on a Saturday night. Ladies, I'm single. What am I marinating? Whenever Gladwell puts out a book, I'm right on that. Of course, I binged all the Cardone books, and I'm probably going to binge all the Vanderchuck books because we would love to have him on the show. And I'm reading right now The Complete Idiot's Guide to Eating Paleo, and I'm about to go downstairs and do some moves from Men's Health. No gym required. Use your body weight to get ripped. And then Modern Drummer magazine comes to the house every month. So. Yeah. That's
one thing I was pretty impressed by on the plane last week. You cracked open the Modern Drummer, and you were actually going through the different tips and stuff like that of rudiments and all the stuff that looks like hieroglyphics to me.
Yeah, I keep up on it. I used to write a lot for Modern Drummer magazine, and I haven't been in it in a while. So the universe is kind of tugging at me, going like. You have some more things to say, and I'll probably write some more practical stuff like playing with loops and getting along with bandmates and how to stay healthy on the road and all that kind of stuff.
Applying a sales process to what you do.
How about that?
Exactly. Well, anyway, man, I appreciate you being a guest on my my little podcast that could.
I love it. I think it's so smart, and you've always been a super smart guy and a big champion of me, and it was fun. We had some Swisher Sweets and some
white wine.
Top wine.
And we tried an Uber for the first time.
Well, now you guys know what Uber is all about, and I use Lyft, but it's all great.
We Airbnb'd for the first time, and we Ubered for the first time.
My Lyft bill for 2017 was $6,500.
Are you serious?
But it's okay because do you know what a DUI costs? $10,000.
Yeah.
So I had chauffeured rides all year long.
And you're so personable when you get in there. You make friends with the driver.
Oh, I get so many cards from, because in Nashville I meet musicians, songwriters, and videographers, actors. It's great.
An Uber driver really has an opportunity to become quite big if they really wanted to.
I think there's somebody out there that should mount a camera and film everything.
There's a definite podcast in there somewhere with all the people you come across. But anyway, man, I'm not going to keep you any longer. And thanks for being on my podcast. Those listening, please subscribe, rate, and comment to the JMVO Weekly Primer. Of course, our podcast, Pick Rich's Brain. You can always do the hashtag Pick Rich's Brain and find out all the episodes that are there. They're at richredmond.com/podcasts with an S, as well as on youtube.com/Rich Redmond. How's that for you?
Love it. Well, that's really fantastic. Yeah, keep in touch, everybody. I'm just at Rich Redmond on all the platforms.
Thanks for listening, guys.